Welcome to Kay's Flower School live class. So this is a free step-by-step tutorial, perfect for the beginner, the amateur, or just the person that absolutely loves flowers. So we would love a little bit of interaction. So if you're watching, why don't you comment below? Let us know where you're watching in from. If you have any questions throughout this tutorial, just post your questions in the comment box and I will come back later on this evening and I will answer everybody. So first of all, I have a little container. So this one is probably suitable for Valentine's Day or just an occasion, like a romantic occasion, maybe an anniversary, or maybe somebody who was bold and is looking to make up and apologise. So the little container, little basket container, that's available from a wholesalers in Ardee, County Louth, and it's called Evergreen Silk Plants. Anybody can buy from them, you don't have to be in the trade. And the prices that are quoted are all including VAT. Now what I would recommend you to do, I'll put the link in the comments, or maybe if one of my students is watching, they might oblige me. Put the @ Evergreen Silk Plants and the name of the company will come up. And then you can just click on it. You can contact them either to Messenger, DM them, and the fella's name is Charlie. And he'll be able to come back with you with availability, prices, and organise to get them posted out to you. We get asked all the time, what about the UK? And yes, Charlie posts to the UK, discuss with him about customs duties, charges, etc. The container itself is not plastic lined, so I'm going to use some cellophane. A plastic bag would do the exact same job, to be honest. So this is heavy duty cellophane. It's what we use for hand-tied bouquets. It is a heavier quality and it's less likely to kind of leak. So I'm just going to cut like a narrow strip of it. That's going to be plenty. I'm just going to throw that down on the floor. And then I'm just going to roll it over, a couple of times so that it's like double and triple layered, okay? And then I'm going to place it down into the container. Now, as I said, a plastic bag will do the same job. So then I'm going to use a piece of floral foam. Just get myself a knife here, okay? I'm just going to get a piece of floral foam that will sit down into it. I just want to take a little bit off the side here. And no, I won't need much off the top. So just a little bit off the one side, you'll see why. And I'm going to place this piece of floral foam down into my plastic bag. There we go. Might have to trim it in a second, but this is what it looks like at the moment. I didn't use a frog's leg, and I'm probably not going to use anchor tape either. So what I want to do is incorporate a gift, because as I said, this is probably a romantic gesture. So what I have is a small little mini bottle of champagne. There's actually a picture of me on the front of it. This must have came from my own vineyard. I'm only joking. It was done for me as a little present. So I do need a little bit more taken off the foam on one side. So I'm just going to trim that back another bit. There we go. Now obviously if you're selling this, okay, you're not allowed to sell alcohol. Remember that, okay? You need a license to sell alcohol. But the customer can actually give you the alcohol and then you can include it once you're not charging for it. That's really, really important. If you're in a flower shop and you're delivering it, be very careful that the person who it's been delivered to is over 18, because again, you could be breaking licensing laws. Now I'm just putting some small little bits of foam, the bits that I trimmed up, just down into the end there, because I want to kind of like rise the bottle up a little bit. And then I'm going to place the bottle in here, wedge it in place. It's going to cover my photograph there. And there is our little bottle of champers in our container ready to go. And the great thing about using a bottle is that the moisture from the floral foam is not going to do it any harm at all. Now I'm just going to use a couple of small little bits of foliage, but not too much, because I want to get the flowers in first. And then it's probably better to try and kind of like work around the flowers and hide anything that needs to be hidden. So just at this stage, I'm just going to cut the eucalyptus up into small little sprigs. So just by kind of cutting down in between the branches, you see like what I'm doing there, like a fork, come down in between the branches. That one is a little bit thick, so we leave it off altogether. We'll just cut another one here. So cut down in between the fork and just cut down small little sprigs. That's a handy way of cutting, rather than cutting off individual leaves, because there's no strong stem on them. And just in around close to the bottle, because obviously I won't be able to get at that area afterwards, I'm just going to add a few small little bits of this foliage just to kind of... So as I said, I probably will add more foliage in when I get the flowers in, but the idea of the foliage is just to kind of camouflage in around close to the bottle and just in there at the side, which may be awkward to get at afterwards. So the plan is to use 3 roses in this arrangement. In romance, 3 roses signifies I love you. So that's how I'm going to use the 3 roses. Now, if one of your roses happens to be a little bit smaller, always make sure that that's placed at the top. The medium rose is placed in the middle, and the larger headed rose is placed at the bottom. So it's kind of smaller, a little bit bigger, and then a little bit bigger as it comes to the end. I always say to the students, it's a bit like women's bodies. We start off small, we gradually get bigger around the boob area, and we spread out around the bum area and the arse area. We definitely get wider and that little bit bigger. So always keep that rule in mind when you're doing flower arranging. With the 3 roses, it's nice if they're slightly zigzagged. Now when I say zigzagged, it doesn't mean one is over there, one is over there, and one is over there. Do you know what I mean? But just a slight little bit of a zigzag in the display, rather than 3 roses directly on top of the other. It looks more natural, and again, it is a little bit more professional. So I'm going to have a look at my 3 roses. You know what I mean? There's not a massive difference. One is a little bit bigger, so that's the one that I'll start with. This container has got a front and a back, so I'm going to turn the front around to me, and obviously I'll keep turning it around to you. So my first flower I'm going to cut not too short, because there's a little bit of a drop, you know what I mean, from where the edge of the container is. It's a little bit of a drop down to where the floral foam is. So I'm going to cut the rose on a slant. I'm going to remove them leaves because they're going to get in the way when I go to insert them. I'm going to have a look at the flower that I make sure I have the nicer side looking out. If you feel that you need to remove any of the guard petals, you can remove them off. And I'm going to place this flower, and it's very, very, very slightly angled to the left hand side, okay? Just very, very slightly angled to the left. So just kind of turn that around to you there just so that you can see it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to step above it with the next flower. So again, this one is kind of like a little bit, that one's the smaller one, so I'm going to keep that one aside. So this flower, again, cut it on a sharp angle. This leaf is a little bit tattery, so I'm going to remove this leaf. And coming in behind that bottom flower, do you know the way, just stepped up a little bit higher, and you can see the way I just stepped over a little bit to one side. And that's what I was trying to explain to you about the zigzag, rather than keeping them in an exact straight line, but it's not miles over. It's a weeny little bit to one side, and again, a weeny little bit over to the opposite side. And now I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to cut the 3rd rose a little bit longer, cut it on a sharp angle. Again, the leaf this time, that one is a little bit tattery, so I'll just maybe cut that single leaf off. But the others are absolutely fine, so I'm going to leave them on. So again, I'm going to come in behind that there with our 3rd rose, and again, just leaving it up that little bit taller. Like the container itself is really, really small. I'm going to turn it around now, you're looking at the front. And you don't want to, you have to keep everything in proportion, do you know that way? So you don't want to come up really, really tall. And again, you want it to balance with the little bottle of champagne that we've added into one side. Now, as a little extra, I have a couple of twigs. So these are twigs, and we buy these in from Wicklow Foliage Farm, or Stuart Williams in Wicklow. Again, he's in Red Cross, and we've used them at most of our classes. And he sells these twigs, and they're dyed, okay? Now obviously you could get some twigs yourself, and you could dye them yourself, but it's really handy when somebody else has it all done for you. And that's just giving me a little bit of exaggerated height, but yet it's not kind of like overflow, you know what I mean? It's not overboard. And then this little piece there, I'm just going to cut like individual little bits of twig off. But this is great because if you ever buy a bunch of it, you can't just buy 2 stems of it. You can store it in your garage or your shed until you need it, you know that way. And it's great for just adding to the arrangements. So again, I'm just adding a little bit kind of coming up. I'll show you now and turn it around to you. A little bit coming up in between them 3 roses, and it adds a little bit of a dimension, you see, to your display, that it doesn't look too fat. It also adds a little bit of movement to this display, which we're also looking for. Now, I always like to add another bit of texture. So a great flower to use with roses is the erigonum. A lot of people call it thistle. It's not actually thistle, but it's part of, I suppose, the same family. It does look nice. And again, a bit of like the purple mixed in through the red can look nice. Now this stem is quite strong, so you may be able to cut off a couple of individual flowers. You know that way, you see like single little individual flowers. And again, I'm just going to stagger them, do you know, that way, a little bit in between the 3 roses, just to give us another texture, another little bit of a dimension coming up through the design. So just put that one shorter there, kind of down into it. Now I've just added a tiny bit, you see, just coming up through the roses here. And then this one is on, I'm going to work for this one here. I'm going to cut off that little side one, maybe that little side one. And just this stem is narrow, so I can leave it kind of like a little bit of height on it, just to bring it up around near that top rose. So just cut this one off, come back around here, and again, just to give us a little bit of that thistle coming up near that top rose. And then the other heads that I've cut off, again, I'll just add them in, a little bit out to one side, and a little bit out to the opposite side, you know, that way. So it's just something different. You don't need it. If you haven't got it, it's absolutely fine. But purple and red actually work well together. Now, one more there, I might use it in a second. So that's like the 2 stems of Orignum. Another flower which can be a good one to use is, and again, people may not be mad about them, chrysanthemums, okay? And personally, I'm not mad about chrysanthemums, but I do love this variety. So Feeling Dark Green, or Envy chrysanthemums they're called. And I just love the shape of the flower. And to me, it's not like funeral chrysanthemums. Because you know the way some chrysanthemums can be a bit funeral-y, especially if you have anybody watching from Italy, you kind of find they have a bit of a phobia about using chrysanthemums for anything else but funeral work, okay? So again, I'm just going to cut off that little head, just to add that in there. So using my little chrysanthemum heads, I'm just going to make a group maybe to one side. So again, I'm just going to cut off individual heads. Excuse the phone there, really, there for a second. We'll put it on silent. And again, I'm just going to add here and there a couple of little individual chrysanthemum heads. I'm probably not even going to use the full stem. Do you know that way? It's just a little bit of a texture coming into the display. And it's not costing us a lot of money. Now, another flower that you could use, just turn that around that you can see it. Another flower you could use is maybe a couple of carnation heads, and they would work well. So you can see why I didn't want to overdo the foliage part at the beginning, you know, that way, because it is a quite tiny arrangement, and it is a quite tiny little piece of floral foam that I have to work with. So again, I'm just going to cut off 2 or 3 more of these little heads and just kind of like stagger them down through the display, and it's just for texture, giving us another dimension and then also another shade. So we kind of have like the greens, the purples and the reds. But yet when you look at the arrangement, it's the red roses that you see, like the other flowers are kind of a little bit insignificant. I'm going to bring another head just down here, tiny little bit lower, kind of peeping out behind our box. Now again, if anybody has any questions about other flowers that you could use or substitute, just place them in the comments, because as I said, I will come back to everybody. So that's it with our flowers there so far. And now what I want to do is continue with the foliage part and hide it with a bit more foliage, and then also adding another texture with the eucalyptus. Now the eucalyptus is a great foliage to use. You'll get a fabulous scent coming off it. Most people, I don't think I've ever met anybody that says, I hate eucalyptus. Nice and soft and graceful, and even to let a little bit of it kind of like, you know, bounce outside the display, which I'm doing there, can look really well. And any of the stems that's left over, if anybody maybe happens to have an open fire, place them stems into your open fire, and oh my god, the scent in your house will be something else. So that's just that side of it, you see, just filled in with a little bit of the eucalyptus. And now I'm going to do a little bit over this side. And also, like, you know, I mean, a little bit of texture into the back of the arrangement as well. I'm always saying to the students, when a customer buys something from you, they always look at the back of the display as well as the front. It's like when you go into the shop and you buy a pair of jeans, you look at the hanger, you turn them around and you look at the arse of the jeans. Or even if you bought a t-shirt, like you naturally turn the hanger around to have a look at the back, right? It's the same with flowers. Like people, you know what I mean, look at the arrangement and then they do kind of go around the back and have a look at it. Or I'm always saying to the students, if it did happen to go into a hospital, there's some poor Elwyn in the other bed and all she gets to look at is the back of your display. At the class we call it the Elwyn in the other bed. So always look after the back of your arrangements just to finish them off. So I think that's nearly covered in there. I think I'll be happy enough with that, just moving that. The bottom rows, I'm just going to move it a slight little bit over. Now you're never supposed to take something out and stuff it back in again, but I just kind of feel it would look better if there was just a tiny little bit more of an angle over to the opposite side. We'll just get it in there. There we go. And then I just need another little green chrysanthemum just coming up in between that. And I'd be really happy then with that little display. So there is, I'll just clean off the table there so that you can see it. So there is our little Valentine basket with a little bottle of champagne with just our 3 roses. Very simple arrangement for you to copy at home. I hope you enjoyed that tutorial. If you have any questions at all, as I said, post them in the comments. We'd love a little bit of interaction, so whether it's a thumbs up, a smiley face, or even just a comment below. And we would really appreciate if you could share any of our free tutorials that we post on our Facebook pages, because obviously we depend on the interaction. This is how we advertise our courses.
Janette, you might just stick it up on the turntable just there, and if you stand away out with the white background, it's not as easy to see the finished with the black of your top.
Yes.
As beautiful as it is.
As beautiful as my lippy jumper is today. As Mammy said to us, don't give us any of that lip.
Just
so now move
perfect. Yeah,
side,
that's much better. Yeah, yeah.
Anchor tape there, give a little bit of a turn around so that you can see it.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So again, we'd really appreciate if you shared it, you know, that way if anybody has any questions, comment below. And if you have any questions maybe regarding training here at Case Flower School, the easiest thing to do is drop us an email, info@flowerschoolireland.com. Thank you for watching. My name is Janette and I'm from Case Flower School.